Hey guys, I said I was going to make this video and I was going to wait a little bit in order to actually do it, but I probably should do it now. Now, I did make a, disclaimer at the beginning of my liberals being, uh, and the liberals, having their downfalls. But in this one, I kind of also have to just do the same thing and just basically explain the downfalls of different people on the right hand side. Now, I lean more to the right, but I do have some left leaning politics here or there. Correct from the days where I used to consider myself a social democrat. Like, I want my gay couples to be able to marry, smoke weed, own guns, and pay low taxes. And there might not be a lot of people on the right who agree with all of that, but I don't. I'm more of a libertarian in that kind of way. I mean, looking at my shirt, you can kind of see. I mean, this is just a joke, but that is kind of what I believe. So I guess I should get started. Now, I'm not fully up read on all this, and I have to keep in mind that some of this information may be a little bit out of date at this point, but need to keep it in mind. So I guess the first person I should be talking about is, well, Milo Yiannopoulos. Yiannopoulos? No, that is not how you pronounce that name. Milo Yiannopoulos. Wow, that's a very complicated name. I got it written right here, and I still can't freaking figure out how to pronounce that. Now, his story is a little bit interesting because he has been a huge critic of feminism, Islam, and social justice movement, which is a lot of stuff that people on the right are also highly critical of. One interesting thing about him, though, is that he was a gay British commentator, and he said that he basically went through conversion therapy to no longer be gay, and then he allied himself very strongly with the right, but he has had some very, let's say, controversial takes. This is one problem that you will actually see with people from the right is that they have been basically oppressed for so long by liberal governments that they have fallen into like complete and utter extremism in some regards. So, like other people on the right, they started to blame more and more like Jewish people for their issues. Because there's a lot of really famous Jewish people who have a lot of money and put money into electing Democrats or other liberals throughout the world. Now, one such person, George Soros, has stated very emphatically that he is not a religious man. He does not believe in Judaism, and he has in the past, when World War II was going on, is he was helping to confiscate the properties of Jewish people. And he specifically said that he does not feel any guilt for this. He was a child at the time, and he had been given to a friend of the family, and this friend was pretending to be his father, and this guy's job was basically to confiscate the property of Jewish people who had been captured by the Germans. And while he very specifically has said that he does not feel any guilt from this, even when he learned exactly why he was doing all this in World War II, which, in my personal opinion, marks the guy out as a complete and utter psychopath. And then he has used not his religion, but his race in order to block all criticism. And when a guy this powerful has spent like billions of dollars to elect prosecutors throughout the country, and there is evidence that these prosecutors report directly to Soros in some cases, or at the very least have to meet him after they get elected, and then he basically tells them that if they ever step out of line, he will not fund their next election. So this has caused, like, people like this have caused a lot of people on the right to see that, along with all the money we send to Israel, that Jewish people rule the world, which people should go watch uh, Nuxanar, also called Nuxtaku, and watch his videos on these people who actually believe that stuff. And he actually debunks a lot of this, especially the stuff about blood libel. And there's a whole thing about it. Basically, people misinterpreting. Oh God, I can't remember the name of the religious text off the top of my head. Oh God. Well, anyways, so we're just gonna skip past that. Milo's huge problem is that he, being a British commentator, was relatively easy to cancel because he had been on, British network TV, and they are much more liberal in Great Britain. If you've been paying attention at all, they have started to arrest people in Great Britain for blasphemy against Islam in specific. Which, my God. Now, if you don't know the history, during World War II, the funny mustache man actually had alliances with a lot of people in the Middle East because a lot of Muslims also did not really like Jewish people, and he believed that Muslims were amazing fighters and they were the perfect people to ally with to deal with all the Jewish people that were in the Middle East. And, well, even with the people who criticize Islam, they have also come to hate Jewish people in their own right. Because the horseshoe effect is basically real. So when Milo got canceled, basically, he started to become more and more extreme, and then he tried to ally himself with the right, and then said that he is no longer gay, which is a ridiculous notion. You can't just, like, stop being gay. That's not really a thing. And he eventually allied himself with, like, Kanye West, for example. Now, if you don't know, Kanye West is a man who has, I think, bipolar disease or like borderline personality disorder. He has always had like issues, but he made the mistake of marrying one of the Kardashians, Kim Kardashian specifically. Now, the Kardashians weren't really that special of a family. They just happened to be very rich and they were very good at marketing. And they basically became like the royalty, more or less, of America to the detriment of like pop culture in general. So there was there is like this issue with him where he like will have periods of very manic behavior and then periods where he's like very depressed, and the guy obviously needs like some mental help. However, in Hollywood, while mental illness and drug abuse is often ignored, anyone who says anything remotely conservative over the last few decades is basically viewed as insane. And they will try everything in their power to ruin the person, blacklist them from Hollywood, or do anything in their power to just make them go away. Now, it wasn't the case with Britney Spears, but Britney Spears, she was legitimately mentally ill, and her father, while being a greedy son of a bitch, from what I understand, basically, was correct in the fact that she was not somebody you should trust with a absolute fortune. Kanye West kind of being a little bit similar, also, but his problem also comes from the fact that one of the Kardashians, Kim specifically, is a very left leaning, very like feminist figure. And he has always been a relatively conservative guy. But when he was being forced to see doctors basically against his will, they were trying to not just treat him, but also kind of pull him out of the public spotlight so he wouldn't ruin the reputation of the Kardashians. And they also wanted to keep him around because he was a relatively famous figure himself, and They basically, in my personal opinion, kind of wanted him to be a puppet a little bit, or at least say the right politics and stay on the left side of things. Eventually, he got divorced with his wife, and his wife started to have her daughter do these very provocative dances on TikTok, trying to become relevant and famous again, much to the disgust of Kanye, who tried to stop the whole thing. Well, Kanye noticed that if you ever try to criticize Jewish people like George Soros, who again, not he does not believe in the Jewish faith, but the left will use that as an easy target to go after people. After all, if you criticize one of their biggest fundraisers in the entire country, you are basically putting a giant bullseye on your forehead. And because he's Jewish, the obvious answer in order to smear anyone who criticizes George Soros is just to call them an anti Semite. This, along with like the left's tendency to throw the term racist around every opportunity they can, makes it seem like they are always pulling for Jewish people specifically. And this leads to conspiracies that Jewish people are controlling the entire world. They're not. There's not enough evidence for it. Again, watch Nux Noir and you would get the basic understanding of how all out of proportion this whole thing is lamed. Again, pay attention to guys like Hassan Piker, who will never admit that any of the terrorist groups out in the Middle East have done anything wrong, and they will justify the murder of Jewish people to an immense extent, including saying that babies are colonizers and they should be eliminated just as much as anybody else. These people are insane, okay? This is what we mean by the horseshoe effect. When someone gets into this really like rabbit hole, they end up just going completely and utterly insane. Like, I'll get to it when I get to it, but Kanye West had been a supporter of Trump, and that was a huge no-no in Hollywood and in California in general. So it was a huge like deal for people in the Democrat Party to basically get rid of Kanye, but not kill him, but to like institutionalize him or make him out to be a crazy racist. And Kanye, being the wild card that he is, has gone out of his way to kind of prove them right as much as possible, because he is of the opinion that if people don't want you to go down certain avenues of belief or rhetoric, that he should double down on that and start being even more radical just to prove them wrong. Which, again, it's a pretty stupid thing to do, to let other people's opinions of you, like, really push your political beliefs in one direction or another. And again, evil is not exclusively from coming from one political belief or another. For example, Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi are both Catholic, which is a huge reason I don't buy into that whole Jewish conspiracy nonsense, because it doesn't matter what religion people are or what race they are. There are people who are politically corrupt on every level, on every race, every religion. There are people who will use religion or or their race to make a political statement and use that as a shield. After all, Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden are these just paragons of absolute, like, devotion to God. And therefore, they're allowed to abort as many children as possible. And you can tell by my sarcasm just how I think of that specifically. Kanye West eventually decided to stab Donald Trump in the back and to bring Milo Milo and Nick Fuentes to one of his parties. And Trump, not knowing who Nick Fuentes is because he's not terminally online like a lot of people, invited them in and had conversations with them. And this was supposed to ruin Trump's reputation. It didn't. And basically, at this point, everyone on both sides of the aisle just think that Kanye is completely and utterly insane and that he should just be ignored at this point because he's just acting out to gain attention. But anyways, I guess that brings us to our next subject matter, Nick Fuentes. So Nick Fuentes, I'm not sure if he's gay like Milo is, but he also is a very interesting figure. I don't believe he is as racist as people have said he is, but he also buys into that whole Jewish conspiracy stuff, and has said some pretty wild stuff in his day. Now, Nick Fuentes has been canceled several times, and as people get canceled more and more, they start to believe that whoever they were criticizing at the time were the people who are the ones who are destroying their lives, where really it's just any insanity that you sprout will like disgust anybody, and people on both the right and left side will not want to be associated with you. I'm not saying that cancelings are correct. We should have people who we disagree with talk more often, as long as we are able to make our counter arguments for them and make sure that our counter arguments are as publicized as the opinions of the people we disagree with, which is one problem with the media, is the media will always publish one side of the argument and not the other side of the argument. But when these people are deboosted, they become just more and more radical. Nick Fuentes also, again, buys into the whole Jewish conspiracy stuff, but he had gone on to a podcast with I'm not sure if it was the Breakfast Club, but basically they were trying to get him to say the N-word. And he was being like a relatively stand-up guy during this interview, and you can actually see in the faces of some of the black women around the table that they were actually attracted to him, which there's this whole Stone Toss comic on Twitter that's absolutely hilarious, where it shows like some leftist accusing a like dude in a Confederacy shirt saying that you're racist, and he's like, well, if I'm really racist, then what do you think about this? And then he turns to some black woman, and then he's like, I'm racist, and then the woman looks scared for a second, and then she looks really turned on. And it was literally that meme. You could see it in her face that she was attracted to Nick Fuentes. And Nick Fuentes was trying really hard to not look actually racist. It was the most bizarre thing I think I've ever watched in a video. And it's just like, what the hell is happening here? It's just, this is one reason why you should always have the opposition talk, because you just get these absolutely wild moments where you, like, maybe you like kind of misjudge the people, but at the same time it's just so absolutely ridiculous, and their politics are just so all over the place that they shouldn't really be taken seriously, but at the same time it's just it's just so funny. It's funny to make fun of these people sometimes. I mean, I know like a lot of them were done dirty here or there, but a lot of those things they say are just so off the wall. It's absolutely crazy. And like I always get like relatively annoyed when some crazy person on the right says something, and then like every single Republican has to come out of the woodwork in order to denounce it, whereas some crazy person on the left is setting fire to Teslas. The media doesn't hold those people accountable, saying that they should like denounce everyone who's being a terrorist inside the United States. It gets really frustrating. That also breeds the extremism on both sides of the aisle, because when right people on the right are always being called to denounce somebody on the right or someone considered to be on the right. Again, horseshoe theory kind of postulates that these people aren't right or left. They're just utterly batshit, basically. But, God, I can go in circles all day about it because I have made a video on this before, but politics isn't just right or left. And it's not just authoritarian and libertarian. It's also like whether or not you believe in authoritarianism, um, libertarianism, right hand politics, left hand politics. Then you get into open market and controlled market, and then there's like another axis. So like politics isn't like a two-dimensional graph like you always see in memes online. I would say it's like a third dimensional or even a fourth dimensional graph. And people just like, these guys are on the right, these guys are on the left. Whereas I would say guys like Milo, Nick, and Kanye are like on the right, but their politics are more complex than that. And their politics are also so all over the place that just saying that they're on one side of the aisle or another is absolutely ridiculous. Politics has been oversimplified for way too long, and this kind of polarization and this like kind of tribalism that's going on both the right and the left, where the tribalism has been really pushed by the left hand side, and they're always trying to push a lot of people out of the left to the right, saying like, this guy, we don't agree with this guy, therefore he's like a right wing Yahtzee. Where I, and then people on the right look at the guy and he's like, no, he's not on our side. What are you talking about? That's crazy. I mean, we don't want any association with this guy, and the media just keeps reporting on that guy as being some kind of far right dude. It's the left hand side, in my personal opinion, that's pushing this kind of polarization and also the tribalism that's going on because they always try to categorize people as being far right or whatever, saying that people like the mid-century Germans and the neo-mid-century Germans are right wingers for some reason, despite the fact that both of the funny mustache man and the funny Italian dude were both very adamant that their policies and their political beliefs came from socialism. And there's a video on it that I should probably mention from Is the Imperium of Man Fascistic? And that was made by Arch Warhammer. And it's something everyone should listen to because it really does make the point that the mid century German belief was a left wing ideology, not right wing. Whereas for me, something that is more right wing is the belief of like divine rule, like some god king ruling by the grace of God. That is more a right wing belief than the mysticism of the mid century Germans. But I mean, it is what it is. So then, what else should we be talking about? Well, I guess we have to get into Andrew Tate. Well, Andrew Tate's situation is very complex and very interesting to me. I was of the opinion that he made a good point that the Romanian government is absolutely and utterly corrupt. But so is also the British government. So when the Romanians went after him, I was very skeptical of the whole situation, especially since they were playing a lot of his like clips out of context, and they basically put him in jail for a long period of time without like much evidence or without even charges. I was listening to Romanian TV. His name is V. That's his nickname. Or also, what is his other channel? I can't think of it off the top of my head. But he was basically saying that this is pretty common for Romanians, but did not trust the government of Romania or the British government, especially since they had him basically in solitary confinement for all that time. Again, without ever releasing any of the charges or anything like that. And especially since a lot of the females that came out said that they had not been abused and they knew exactly what they were getting into. As time has gone on, I kind of fall into like this is not my problem kind of feeling for me, because it's like it seems like he may have done exactly what they're accusing him of, and a lot of the stuff he was pushing, while it was corrupting the youth of Great Britain, was pushing a very not conservative view on marriage and relationships, where like Tate, well, he converted to Islam, and one thing that he absolutely loves about Islam is polygamy, which is not a conservative thing whatsoever. At least not conservatism for Christians. It may be conservative for like Mormons or Muslims, but this is not something that we find socially acceptable anymore. Where you have multiple wives or multiple girlfriends and you're exploiting them for your own benefit. Now let me turn that off. Um, and that's like just a huge part of the whole thing. And again, Tristan kind of made this point, which I kind of agree with, is that they were accusing him of basically stealing hundreds of dollars worth of profits from like cam girls that they were using, which Tristan Tate is a multi millionaire. Like, why would he need a few $100 from his cam girls? Now, that's a very huge misnomer, though, because it's not actually a good argument if you really think about it. Because the reason why you would take money away from like people that you are basically turning into like the internet version of a prostitute, you're taking their money away so they can't get away from you, and they basically rely on you for everything. So as time has gone on and Tristan Tate and Andrew Tate went to Florida, basically the Florida government has said that they will investigate them to the fullest extent of the law, because there's some evidence that they were abusing kids. And again, this is one of those situations where I'm just in wait and see at this point. I don't know what to believe, and I just don't trust that there is no corruption involved whatsoever. I mean, it could be that they're completely guilty of everything that they're accused of, and but also at the same time, the only reason they were thrown under the bus was because they went against the corruption in the government, which is like the type of people we are ever going to get in the Epstein files. If Trump had been in the Epstein files, he would have been thrown under the bus immediately, because he had gone against every single like left wing person that had once loved the guy. Whereas, like, if someone ever decides to not help the Democrats anymore, they will be exposed as have been on the Epstein files. Because, yes, they could be trying to become more right wing, or they think that they need to jump ship from the Democrats, but that doesn't mean they're not guilty of doing exactly of what they're accused of. And what they're being accused of only came to light because they went against the left-wing narrative. So Andrew Tate, I think, is probably at least somewhat guilty of what he's been accused of, but again, this is something that I'm on wait and see on. Well, anyways, I guess that's all I really have for him. And then I guess the next person I should be talking about is, well, Candace Owens. Now, if you're not aware of what's going on with Candace Owens, this is something, again, I really got a good feel of from Nux. Because Nux makes a whole bunch of good points on the way he defends Jewish people, and he also points out just how absolutely ridiculous the notion is. Now, you could say that Nux is Jewish, therefore he has a certain bias to it, but, well, it, the things that Candace has been talking about have just been absolutely insane. Now, Candace Owens was always a left wing person. She had come out of college helping out like left wing commentators. And I'm sure somebody actually knows who the people are that I'm thinking of right now, the people that she worked for at the time. And then as she got married and had kids, she started to become more conservative, as women tend to do. They tend to become more conservative as they have children. But she has stayed in the political zeitgeist and being a huge streamer and political commentator. She has continued on her journey of self discovery. And she has fallen into the pit trap that I think a lot of these other guys have fallen into. Is that the more she realizes that we have been lied to about certain topics, they have started to gone into full blown conspiracy mode, just looking into every single solitary conspiracy that has been formed and started to think that, maybe all of this is true. Maybe all the conspiracies are true, even the ones that make absolutely no sense. Like something that she admit that she was looking into was frickin' flat earth theory. Now, I've always been a relatively intelligent guy. I hate to say that because I mean it's putting a little bit glaze on myself that I don't think I deserve because I have done some pretty dumb things in my life. But I've always been relatively good at, science, math and that kind of stuff. Not the smartest guy socially, and some of the things I'm not good at certain pronunciation of English words either, let's just say, because I say like genre instead of genre, or like different genres, and I'm just like, God, genre just sounds so wrong to me. And I know not a lot of people say it as genre or genre. Yeah, no. People say genre, and I say genre. And not a lot of people say it like genre. And someone made a point on a previous video about that, and it's just like, I don't care. I mean, I always said genre or genre. Because, yeah, I've always said genre because I see it as like generate with gen, ear, genre. I guess it would be genre if you wanted to be really annoying about it. God. Now my brain. Whoever made that comment, I hate you because now I'm actually thinking about it like a little bit too much, and now my brain cannot comprehend words anymore. Thank you so much. Anyways, Candace Owens is the type of person who, once they found out people were lying about one thing, that now she is questioning everything, and now there is no basis for her knowledge. She has to look into every little thing and has to wonder if there is some kind of conspiracy on why we were taught the way that we were taught. Thinking that, oh, the public school system is all run by leftists, therefore everything they said is a lie, therefore we have to start questioning everything. And while you should look into different, conspiracies, I have gone over like the conspiracy to take out JFK and the conspiracy to take out MLK and RFK. And there is I have certain opinions on that stuff. And I for the JFK shooting, for example, I do not believe that there was a second shooter. There was no magic bullet. That was a misdirect by a very ignorant senator made at the time, or it was like someone in the House of Representatives, because it came with the conclusion that the vehicle that they were driving was standard, where it wasn't, where the back of the vehicle was modified to be wider than normal and sitting higher so people could see JFK better. And when you put in those modifications to the vehicle, the magic bullet theory completely falls apart because the magic bullet theory makes this inference that the bullet comes in, then magically curves down to hit the governor. But when you make the modifications to the vehicle that the vehicle actually had, there is no curve, it just goes straight through. And they actually, if there is a video online that I watched where it shows that yes, one bullet could make 6 wounds, and that if you look at the bullet itself being a full metal jacket meant to like punch through solid steel would be slightly deformed, but not like noticeably deformed if you look at it from certain angles. And if you actually have seen the so-called magic bullet, it doesn't look very deformed in the pictures, but there are pictures where it you see the back of it and it's very clearly squished in, kind of like taking out that whole like point that it was magically pristine. Anyways, that's my huge problem with Candace Owens, is that she started to like hit some um conclusions that like everything that she had ever been taught was wrong, and then has started to go into full blown conspiracies, thinking that like space was invented by Jewish people in order to distract us from God. Or it, basically the theory is that we live in a secular world and that God doesn't exist. Therefore, anything science based is to distract us from our relationship with God, and that therefore science isn't real. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, but at the same time, it's such an absolutely ludicrous idea that science and religion cannot coexist. Because, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as Einstein was confirmed, that the more we learn about science, the more we discover God's amazing design of the universe. Like, Einstein, despite being one of the most intelligent scientists we have literally ever seen since the days of Newton, was a firm believer that all science was just finding out God's plan more directly. I think that was also the point of view of Newton. So dismissing space and round Earth theory, I guess you would call it, as a psyop to make us not believe in God is just so utterly insane to me as to be completely just off the wall bonkers. Just it's just crazy. But part of the reason that she had gone so crazy is for our next subject. Our next subject being, well, Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro has made a lot of mistakes in his time. Now, there is a very insane person that I haven't talked about on the left hand side of things, and that would be um, Ashita Tatsuya, who makes the webcomic Sinfest. Now, it's a little bit of a deviation from talking about people on the right, but basically, Ishida made the webcomic Sinfest, and he's been making it for decades now. Now, he is the kind of person that should be an artist, but probably should not actually be writing a story. Because when he first he started out like iDubbbz. He made very like edgy content, making very edgy comics, and these comics involved a woman named Monica who was like kind of a strong female who kind of believed in feminism, but at the same time she was looking for like a relationship. And then there was the character Slick, who was like this short dude, kind of a douchebag character who wore sunglasses at night, like one of those characters. And the whole story was about Slick and Monica becoming better people and getting over like the kind of poison that has seeped into like the dating market and eventually becoming a couple. This was also like the something similar that happened to Questionable Content, where the main character Faye met like the main character Martin, and their whole thing was that they were going to get together, and it was eventually that was like the whole point of the series until both questionable content, and Sinfest went way off the rails and went straight into liberal politics. For Ashita, for Sinfest, he got into the whole like male feminist thing, and it went pretty crazy. And he was always of the belief that like Trump was like, once Trump came around a decade or two after he started writing his comment, he went into full like anti-Trump because he was a male feminist. And then when all the stuff was happening with um, uh, Israel and Palestine, he went into full on like glazing terrorist, kind of like Hassan Piker has. And he eventually blocked me because I gave like the smallest amount of pushback on his comic, and he's gone into full like the Jews like control everything, like crazy belief. And this is what I mean by the horseshoe theory, because he started on the left and he went straight to anti-Semitism, just like everybody else who seems to finally give in to extremism of one sort or another. Well, anyways, he paints like Ben Shapiro as this Zionist, like asshole who controls like the entire world, and that he like threw Candace Owens under the bus. And a lot of people on the right didn't like that because Candace Owens, while not being the most sane person in the world, still was a highly popular person on his network. Now, Ben Shapiro has said that he doesn't control the network, despite the fact that he's one of the co-founders, and that the real person who runs it is his CEO, who, by the way, the CEO just got fired. And he also released another very famous streamer, one of his content creators, and replaced that content creators with that creator's best friend. Now, some people will know who I'm talking about, and I can't think of her name because I never watched her. I never really. I swear to God, everyone on like the Daily Wire just irks me in some way. The guy I like can watch the most is Michael Knowles, and even he is a little bit strange. Like Matt Walsh is definitely the worst because he thinks that like playing video games leads you to worshiping Satan, basically. I mean, that's vastly oversimplifying things, but all of this like fact that basically a lot of people on the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, and I forget the other guy off the top of my head, like a kind of a bald headed dude. I'm not talking about Matt Walsh, I'm not talking about Michael Knowles, but there's another guy who I don't really like. Basically went full leftist and have accused like everyone of being an anti Semite, especially like Candace Owens, which is a huge turnoff because using that race card every single time like turns off people who are very, very, very sick of race politics. And Ben Shapiro having now his board firing his CEO, the guy that he would always blame for, business decisions. And then they laid off 25% of their staff, has really have a massive downfall for the guy. And it's probably just going to get worse from here because also a lot of the like based movies that he's been trying to make are stuff that like regular people would not want to watch because they want politics out of media. They don't want more media with politics from the other side. They want left wing politics and right wing politics both out of media. Maybe like a more conservative story about a man and a woman falling in love, but they don't want to be like making fun of like leftist politics in their show. They just want a good entertaining show to watch. So it's kind of been not going so good for Ben, and well, I really have no sympathy for Daily Wire. I mean, I watched some of their stuff here or there. Matt Walsh, I watched. Candace Owens, I kind of watched. And Michael Knowles, like I said, is the guy that I'm most likely to watch nowadays. But I have a problem. I watch some of Ben Shapiro's stuff too, but every single one of them has something about them that just turns me off. And it's always something just strange about them, and I just think it's just like you guys did this to yourself at this point. It's like the Andrew Tate thing where it's just like I got this is none of my business. You guys messed up in your own right. Whether or not you guys fail or succeed at this point is of no mind to me. I mean, maybe you prove yourselves to be way better people than I think you are, but at the same time, I really can't get behind some of the stuff you're talking about here or there. And a lot of people on the right may think of me as being like blasphemous or like going against the grain by saying that, but I think one good part about being on the right or closer to the right is that you're less likely to be like excommunicated for having a mild disagreement. But at the same time, I believe that people on the right should be more unified, like the left can tries to pretend to be. Because in Congress, all the Democrats will all vote one way generally, and there will be very few people that split off the vote for the Republican side of things. But that too much unity like that completely destroys individuality, and then they are too like the Democrats are like too unified to the point that it comes across as a cult, whereas people on the right are too disunified, in my opinion. And I think we need to be dragging it back to the center. Now, I'm not saying that Republicans and Democrats should form a uniparty. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is that both sides are starting to deviate too far away from a healthy norm, in my personal opinion. Anyways, I just think that these guys are just absolutely. They need change somewhere. Not to sound like Obama. Christ. Anyways, the last person I want to talk about is somebody that I really don't understand much about, but my God, the whole situation just sounds absolutely insane. And that's Ashley St. Clair. Ashley St. Clair is a commentator that wasn't really on the right, and then it really does seem that she basically tried to throw her weight behind MAGA because that was the popular thing to do. And apparently, for years, she has been trying to get into the pants of Elon Musk, who, again, Elon Musk is more of a left winger than he is on the right. But one thing he agrees with Trump is that government should not be wastefully spending or taxpayer money. And there's a few other things, like he wants to be more focused on science and making his cars and making his rockets that go to Mars. That makes him a good ally for the right. And he would be a good ally for the left if they would stop being so polarizing in politics. Anyways, Ashley St. Clair was trying to get into the pants of MAGA and specifically the pants of Elon Musk, because Elon Musk apparently loves to have many children with many different mistresses, and she succeeded to her wildest extent having a kid with them. But Elon Musk also, I don't know if something's wrong with him. I mean, he's autistic, so it's very possible that having sex is not really his main thing. Or it could also be that he is slightly infertile or something, and I want to spread false rumors here, but it seems like he does like IVF or other like artificial insemination a lot when he like falls in love with a woman. But it seems like for Ashley St. Clair, they actually did have sex, and he actually impregnated her the normal way. And basically, she came out trying to make this whole public stink about it and basically try to make a hit piece on Elon Musk and make him admit in public that he was the father so that he would have to pay her millions upon millions of dollars to keep her shut up and, basically being like the biggest gold digger of all time since he's the richest man who's like ever existed. I think he's like so rich now that he's considered richer than Musa. Mansa Musa. That is not how you pronounce that, but I'm sorry, I don't really care right now. He's the richest man in human history, basically. And I would say And Elon Musk basically came out and like called her out on all her bullshit recently and pointed out that he gave her $2.5 million. How much more would she ever need to raise a kid? And that he would, try to be involved in the kid's life as much as possible, given all the other crap he's doing. Again, I don't really agree with Elon and the fact that he has multiple mistresses and baby mamas. It's gross, but at the same time, he's somebody that we really need on the right and the left. But I just find the whole St. Clair thing to be absolutely hilarious. She has completely and utterly destroyed her reputation and made her out and revealed herself to be the absolute craziest gold digger that I think we've ever seen. And someone who was completely fake, pretending to be a right winger the entire time. Again, things are very polarized, so putting someone in the right or left hand camp I think is stupid in general, but we're talking about like people that are ostensibly on our side. But again, politics isn't a left or right thing. It's a libertarian, authoritarian, right left, like controlled market, um, free market thing. It's at least got 3 or 4 dimensions to it. And, well, she very quickly revealed herself to only be in it for the money. And then tried to drive a wedge, like everyone else, between, like, Elon Musk and Trump, which Elon Musk and Trump have been friends for decades. You're not going to drive them apart. It's not a thing that's happening. They really want to push, like, gaslight them into having a big breakup, and it's just not working at all. But, anyways, yeah, that's all the people on the right hand side who have done very stupid things lately and have gotten themselves into trouble. So I guess that's it for now, guys. Tell me what you think below. If I'm being too hard on some of these people, I don't think I am. Like, there's people who are dumb on both sides of the aisle, and I just want to be a little bit fair. And that's it, guys. Bye.